These are the lyrics from pop group The Pet Shop Boys' song King's Cross from their album Actually, released 2 months prior to the horrific event in 1987 which left 31 people dead following a fire at London's King's Cross station, that it has been alleged was intentionally started. We cannot immediately rule out a coincidence, but then one must also not dismiss more sinister objectives either, before investigating the event for oneself. Could it also be another coincidence that Inspector Peter Power's name is linked to the event?
Peter Power was sent to the scene of the King's Cross fire to coordinate the efforts of the emergency services. He ran the Metropolitan Police's forward command post for much of the evening and most of the night on the 18th of November 1987.
And Indie Media pointed out,
Peter Power and his company, Visor Consultants Limited, were conducting simulation exercises at exactly the same time, and at the same locations, as the July 7 bombings on London Transport. He has had an interesting career, involving the alleged false flag operation, to enable Margaret Thatcher to support Reagan to commence bombings and sanctions in Libya, i.e. the shooting of WPC Yvonne Fletcher. He also gained publicity for his crisis management skills during the mysterious fire that occurred in Oxford Circus Underground in 1984. The BBC report, Pied Piper of the Underground, makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end, to use Peter Power's words describing the coincidence of his company's activities and the explosions on 7/7.
An investigation into the murder of WPC Yvonne Fletcher was carried out under a Conservative government, but the findings have been kept secret, with the death of Fletcher still being used by the Labour government years later as the reason for trade sanctions against Libya. The non-disclosure can only protect those in positions of power from public scrutiny, arrest, and conviction for their crimes. And the BBC article goes on to say,
the present Deputy Commissioner of the Met Police, Ian Blair, was already on scene as a detective inspector. We knew each other very well and he turned to me and said, Peter, I think we've had a bomb explosion here. I asked him why and he said, at least one of the casualties has metal deep inside him, but we're not going to go public on it.
In the article, Peter Powers goes on to speak of the traumatising of the group of officers sent down to retrieve the bodies.
There's a little pub next door to King's Cross railway station and we instructed the landlord to open up that night. We told him we were about to send in a dozen or so police officers and that each police officer would be taken home by chauffeur-driven car after they had worked out their war stories and had a few drinks. I assured the landlord that the commissioner for the police would pick up the tab.
The truth is frequently in plain sight and often openly given to us through numerous art forms. And to someone unfamiliar with this aspect of research, it may quite easily be believed that it is nothing more than the observations of the proverbial tinfoil hat-wearing conspiracy theorist nutjob your corporate media warned you of. But the more you study the practices and beliefs of the saturnal, Satanist, Kabbalistic elites and their agents, the more you will see affirming evidence of their hidden admissions, which, with continued in-depth, non-biased research, becomes further substantiated by other sources and evidence, often supporting an hypothesis to begin with that establishes itself in conjecture before discovering reliable truths in place of previously exhausted avenues. It is the art of critical thinking to venture beyond one's comfort zone and think outside of the box. Often what seems straightforward to begin with, when looked at more diligently without prejudice and scrutinized closely, we discover hidden objectives and agendas. It is alleged that victims of an elite paedophile ring were in a cafe in the underground when the King's Cross fire broke out. Were they among those killed, and possibly deemed to be a threat to the identity of the criminals involved? Or was there something else that the heads of our corporate establishment wanted to divert attention from?
Mike Sullivan wrote in his article, VIP Pedos, The Chicken Rack and Met Cover-Up, published in the Sun newspaper on the 8th of July 2014, that Scotland Yard pulled the plug on a secret surveillance operation into a VIP paedophile ring, allegedly involving MPs and top judges. The year-long probe started in 1983, but was abruptly halted, with officers told, "Forget about it." We were told the order to stop had come from high levels at the Met. That ring still kept operating for years. Reporting for the Mirror newspaper on the 26th of March 2015, Keir Moody told us under the heading, VIP Paedophile Files, Leon Britton's surveillance operation was shut down by Metropolitan Police chiefs, that boys were picked up at King's Cross and dropped off at another location to be repeatedly raped. And former Conservative Minister, Lord Tebbit, was quoted to have said in the Sun's VIP Pedos, the Chicken Rack and Met Cover-Up article, that there may well have been a political cover-up of child abuse at the time, in order to protect the system.
A cloak of secrecy is almost always thrown over the crimes of the corporate establishment. Even after more than 100 years, Scotland Yard have refused to release a 900-page dossier relating to the murders committed in London's East End from 31st August to 9th November 1888, referred to as the Whitechapel Murders, that have been immortalised in the embodiment of the media-created figure called Jack the Ripper. Citing the reason for continued secrecy around the murders as being necessary to protect living relatives of suspects named in the documents from being attacked. Could that be because, as has been strongly suspected for some time, and with good reason, that the killings were in fact carried out to protect the royal house of the late 19th century from public scrutiny and scandal, and one that could cast a desperately unwelcome shadow on the current royal family, just as unpopular today as then, despite the media spin, with a possible link between the murders and the Cleveland Street paedophile scandal that followed the year after the killings in 1889, especially when we consider the royal family of today's much publicised close ties with child procurers for the elite paedophile rings, such as Jimmy Savile and Jeffrey Epstein.